Hello, powerful one. Welcome to this edition of Inner Growth to Sezwa Elimi. I'm sure you know that whatever state your life is today is a product of stories. Yes, I have always been saying this, that stories make our lives. Because one of the greatest ingredients of a story, that's the byproduct of a story, is emotion, feelings. A story is created from an emotive state of mind to bring about an emotive state of mind in the audience. Stories are very powerful. Politics tells stories to have its way. Everything that happens, even the things we buy in the marketplaces, the cars we buy, the clothes we buy, the perfumes we buy, the gadgets, electronic gadgets we buy, everything is made of stories. How about the wives and the husbands we marry? It's all stories. Stories. We tell these stories, hold on to these stories, people listen to these stories and they run with the story. Stories are very powerful. Therefore, I say unto you, beware of stories. Not just beware of stories that you hear, because somehow you can process them and say, okay, I don't like this story. It's not ringing very true. But the most important part of the entire thing is the stories that you have embraced, that you consistently tell yourself. Now, the funny part is that nobody may hear the story. It is just on your inside. You are rolling the story over and over again. When an opportunity comes before you and you want to take it, the story tells you, remember, this is going to change me. Do you want to change me? You say, no, I love you, story, I love you, I don't want to change you. At the time you are responding to that, the opportunity has flown by. You may not be telling these stories to anybody, but guess what? People are seeing the end results of the story. Our stories are responsible for how we look physically. Our stories are responsible for the kind of people that surround us. Our stories are responsible for the state of our finances. Our stories are responsible for the way our families are. Again, I say unto you, beware of stories. When you are confronted with the reason for certain things in your life, you are very quick to give a story representation of why you are where you are. Stories, they are very dangerous as much as they are very, very helpful. How do we manage the stories of our lives? Because there is no life without a story. Everything in our lives are story driven. So how do you manage your stories? What stories are you telling about your life right now? We will dwell on this when we come back from this break. I am Osezwa Anthony Elimi. Hey, you know me. I am in the game of helping you grow from inside out. That is the drill. Welcome back. So, stories. We tell them always. The thing is this. Stories are so emotive. They are connected to our endocrine system. They are connected to every single cell in our being. So that when we try to break away from the story, our entire system reacts, we respond. You know, there was this day, there was a video that somebody posted. It was the video of a snake walking in an ATM gallery. Okay, there were people on the other side of the machines, transacting. But on the other side, separated by a thick wall of glass, was this snake. I don't have an idea of how the snake got in there. This snake was moving in a place. Now, I realized that I really have not looked at the snake in motion before for a long period of time. So on this day, I was looking at the picture. I noticed that every single cell in my body was protesting, screaming at me to stop looking. It was like, there is danger looking at this snake. Stop looking! But being who I am, I said, oh really? Let's just look a little bit more. I kept looking. I noticed that there were some forbidding sensations in my body, and the entirety of it was not just good, but I didn't want to take my eyes off the image. I kept looking at the snake. And you know, a snake is very pathetic walking on a cemented floor, but they are glorious when they are moving in the field, in the grass. So the snake seems to be putting more effort to hold a steady motion. Because like the place was too smooth for its already maybe smooth body or so. I kept watching it. Against all the appearances of things, I focused my attention on the snake. Now, I noticed one thing when I was looking at the snake. I was not friendly. My looks, my attitude towards the snake wasn't friendly at all. It was forbidding. It was like, you snake, you are evil. You know, that was kind of emotion I was ejecting. And I kept looking. Then it started occurring to me that this snake is unfortunate to have been in this location. It's not even able to move properly. This snake needs help. This snake is in a pathetic situation right now. That picture wouldn't have come to me if I moved my eyes initially, because the thing would have been, this snake is a devil. This snake is evil. What is he doing here? You see, when you allow your primordial sentiments to run your affairs, you will be like every other person in your space. I looked at that snake until it found a way up into a hole in the ATM and gradually, doggedly, slowly disappeared into it. It was something else. But I noticed one thing, my friend. That brief period of time, I don't know whether it was 4 minutes or 5 minutes, that I focused my attention on the snake and started judging my own responses, my own reactions to seeing the snake there. I noticed that my attitude towards the snake started changing. I noticed that my emotions, my feelings against the snake started dying gradually. And when the snake eventually disappeared into that place, I first had a feeling, say, oh goodness, from fry pan to fire. It will die from heat. Will he be able to memorize the space out? Will he be able to survive in that place? Now, the original thought that came when it was going into the hole was that, hey, it's going to go in there and kill somebody. You know, those kind of things. It's planting itself to do havoc. That is the primordial sentimental message. Why was my body, the cells in my body reacting against me looking at the snake? Because there is a story embedded in my subconscious about the snake. Who created that story? My experiences of life, my background. Have I ever seen a snake in real life hurt any human being? No, I've not experienced it. I've not. I've seen people who say they have been beaten by a snake. Just now, the snake just beat me. I see the blood coming out from the small cut. I've seen that once. I have seen my uncle kill a massive python and brought home. And we put the python on fire and it scattered the entire place. I'm talking about a python that was at least 23 feet long and this wide, you know, that kind of thing, massive. When you cut it open, it became this wide. I've seen all of those things. But you see, all that I have heard about snakes' wickedness or escapade came from stories that I've been told. Either I was told those stories by word of mouth, or I watched them in movies, or I read them in books. I've hardly seen a story about a snake that is positive. Hardly. It's the same thing when I was growing up. I had stories about cats. Now, before I came into physical contact with a cat, I didn't know anything about cats, and no story was told to me. I was age 8 when I came into contact with a cat. And it was just something that was strange. I had never seen it before. I went to the village in my uncle's house. We went to visit and I saw it. Then I got to know that it belonged to my aunt. That's my uncle's first wife. And this woman was always not happy to see people. She had her face knotted. In as much as we came to visit with a lot of goodies, we came with so many chickens, with a live goat, rice, all kinds of things. People were coming to visit my dad and he was giving them money. Then the highest donation in this country was 20 naira. And to some he gave 20 naira notes, to some he gave 5 naira. It was just some 1 naira, some like that, 50 kobo. He was giving them money with salt, and they will go and dish some rice and give to them. Tomatoes, tin tomato, they're giving that. So people were happy to see us. They were happy to come to our place, and they were praying for my father, and the whole place was full of festivity. But this lady, very pretty lady, lovely woman, neat and all of that, she was always frowning. She was not a happy person. I couldn't explain why. So from that first contact with her, I didn't like her. And I was to stay back in the village to become like the son of my uncle, because he didn't have a child. I stayed back in the village. And this woman, I noticed, everything she wanted to say was from anger. She will shout. She will scream at you. The slightest mistake you will make as a child, she will visit it with a tornado. She wasn't really a bad person, I got to know later, but she had that angry mien about her. And I just didn't like her. Most people also did not like her. And that attitude of hers, I extended it to her cat. So I didn't like her cat. Okay? And then stories started filtering later that cats are witches, that people use them to do all kinds of things. And that story stuck, and I hated cats. And maybe I wouldn't have hated cats, I would have loved cats first before I started hearing the stories about cats. The person that owned the cat colored the image of the cat in me, and I had a different story. Cats are bad. People use cats to do evil. It is bad people that own cats, period. Story. But when I got to secondary school, I left the village now. I came to the city. I was in class 4. I had this friend called Moody in class 4 at Adolf College where I went. And he was in America. One day his parents just told him, you know what, let's go home to Nigeria. He was excited because he had been asking, can we go to Nigeria? Can we go to Nigeria? They brought him to Nigeria and then handed him over to his uncle. Just as I was handed over to my uncle in the village. And then they left him behind. And they never came to pick him. And he kept missing America. We became friends. I became the first person he made friends with in school. We were moving together. He said he liked my English and he loved my panache and all of those things. But there was something else. We exchanged stories, you know. His favorite star in Hollywood was John Travolta. He kept talking about Saturday Night Fever. My favorite star in Hollywood was, of course, Clint Eastwood. Yeah, that was my star. Okay, and of course, we had one common star together in India, and that was Amitabh Bachchan. He called that guy India's finest. That was where we really connected deeply. We had the same love in the Indian star. But he was missing one thing, and that was his cards in America. Wow. Because I had already loved him, we were so close, we had great stories, we talked, we exchanged together. And I couldn't afford to begin to see his cards as evil. I started telling the stories I had back. I said that's a lie. That even in America they have such stories, but it's not true. He told me about, I don't know if that's true, but he told me that when he had an injury was festering, that he noticed that one morning he woke up, he saw some green things on the face of the sore. And there were tiny, tiny particles around it, green particles. And he was scared. They didn't take him to the hospital the same. He was sleeping one day, one of those nights, and he saw that the cat was actually the one bringing those green herbs to apply on his wound. So when he told his uncle what he experienced, the uncle said, well, cats are very wise and they are sympathetic. They help human beings. Then how old was I when I heard this story? I was around 14 going on 15. And that story stuck with me. I was just wondering. I was now in the middle way. In the middle. Between cats are evil, cats are good. I was there. I didn't want to go to the side that says cats are evil. I didn't want to go to the side that says cats are good. I just stayed there. But you see, stories, I'm just trying to paint a picture to let you understand that the stories of your life are created by the background behind them. It's about who told the story to you. It's about what event wove the story. The cat are evil story that I had was woven by the background of my unhappy, sad, screaming, beautiful aunt. See? Then the side of the snakes being evil, the first time I ever heard of a snake, it came from terror. And the funny thing is that I wouldn't have remembered it. I was in Los Angeles at the Celebrity Center. I attended what they call the Dianetic Seminar. And I was on it, undergoing some processing. And they were trying to help me trace some of my engrams, the origin of them. We were trying to get to the basic, all of those things. But there was something that hit me. I've always had a phobia for snakes, trust me. When we brought snakes home from the farm, for the next 3 weeks or so, I was always scared of going to the bush alone. Every movement in the bush was a snake for me, as far as I was concerned. I dreaded snakes. Yet, I never had an experience with a snake, never. I had seen them from a distance and I would take off. Okay, there was a time I was going to the farm with some of my friends. I was in primary school, I think primary 4 or 5. We got to that point where there is a junction that leads to our farm. And the junction that leads to the popular side. Those friends of mine were coming together, went their way, and I was on my way. I still had at least 2 kilometers to cover before I would get to our farm. And that stretch being a lonely road, it's only we that took that road because it led to our property. And that place was shaded with trees so that there were spots where you would see the sun touch the ground. You would just see that spot would be properly lit. Obviously, there were branches that parted ways there. And more often than not, when you were passing, going through that stretch, you would see a snake in that crack where the sunlight touched the ground because they would be warming themselves up in the sun. And when first time I came across a snake stretched there, I stood there. Just that this time I had covered like 1,000 meters. I was quite close to the farm now. I stood there, I didn't move. I was looking at the snake with the sun glittering on its skin. It was yellow and black kind of color. I was there, transfixed. Then something told me that if I didn't, there was no way I would cross the snake. I wasn't going to cross that snake. I stood where I was. I was there. The snake didn't come at me. I'm not sure the snake even saw me, or maybe it saw me, but it didn't move. I was there. Until it occurred to me that I needed to go to the farm. If I got late, I may be brutalized. My uncle might just beat the hell out of me for wasting time before coming to the farm because he knew when we closed from school. I couldn't disturb the snake because if I disturbed it, I didn't know where it would go to. It might go and wait for me in front. All of those things were just at the back of my mind. So I stood there watching the snake. Then something told me to scream. So I screamed my uncle's name, Abba! I called him. No response. I called a second time. And then he responded from the distance. But I was still there, transfixed. Then, after a while, I saw a movement from the corner. It was my uncle that had come. As he appreciated what was that, I pointed to the spot. Of course, he suspected that that must have been the situation. Pointed to the spot, and he started coming towards us. Somehow, the snake just disappeared. Of course, my uncle teased me and called me a girl. That I was just troubled by a small snake. The snake wasn't small. At least, the snake was as big as my forearm. That was not small for a boy of less than 10. So he teased me, and then we went back to the farm. Then what did I do next? Because of that event, if I parted ways from my friends and I got to that point, I would take off top speed because I didn't want my uncle to come and rescue me again and call me a girl. So I'll be running. There were times I saw a snake stretched across the road and I would jump. With that speed with which I was coming, I would fly over it, I would keep going. In fact, because I saw the snake and I flew over it, I will run faster through it. And if I was coming from school and there were no friends of mine to go to farm together because they probably were not going to the farm on that day, from when I left my home, I would run till I got to the farm. And once I got to the farm, I was safe. The farm was my safe haven. But you see, the stretch between home and the farm were dangerous moments. What were posing the dangers for me? The stories, not the snakes. It's the stories of the snakes. It was when I was processing my engrams that I got to know it. And that memory was not something that anybody could have told me. It just came like a television screen. And I was living that moment again. When I was less than 5, and I was staying by the side of our house. At that time, Benin, it was in Benin City, I think Ubo or somehow. There was an expanse of land. Our house was the only house built in that entire space. And I loved the grass that grew on the side of it. And I was whipping the grass with a cane, telling them, you were the ones that insulted me yesterday. Take this for your insult. I was whipping them. And I was going deeper into the bush. The bush was not so grown. It was like slightly above my waist. So I was enjoying it. That I did that every time. Until one day, one of my cousins, I don't know who that person is today, were together doing the same exercise, whipping the grass, punishing them for insulting us. You know, children will create stories. And I heard the voice of my grandmother screaming, calling my name, and said, a snake will bite you. A snake will bite you. And I didn't know what a snake was, but the sound of her voice and the foreboding, the kind of mercy that was behind it, made me understand that the snake was a terrible thing. That was the last time I went to the bush to play that game. So that was the origin of the fear of snakes planted in me. A majority of the stories that we have that run our lives, they began long before we were sentient, long before we were aware of things the way they are. All right? When my grandmother screamed out, the snake will bite you, I didn't know what the snake was. I'd never heard it before. But he said it, and I took it as something terrible. Who was my grandmother? She was the most, as at that time, she was the most credible human being in the world. Not in my life, in the entire world. Right? That was the person that was called my mother. My mother happened to be the most beautiful woman in the world, the harshest woman in the world, or the harshest person in the world, whose large, long, sharp eyes could shred you to pieces. You would prefer to be flogged than for her to give you those eyes. That was my mom. And here was a woman who could cower my own mother, telling me with fear in her voice that a snake would bite me. As a child, I knew what a bite was. Sometimes your brothers, your sisters, your siblings will bite you, and you know how painful it is. For her to now say a snake will bite you, it installed the terror. And subsequently, my encounter with stories of snakes and all of that foregrounded it. A story that you hold for so long in your system becomes a lie that is integrated into your system. You will require another story to dislodge it. Just like the story of Moody regarding the cats tried to dislodge my picked up story about cats. So when you have a story that outweighs another story on the same subject, the weaker story will fade and fizzle. I remember I had a friend. Will I call him a friend, an acquaintance? We're in the same locality and attended the same church, who was very studious, was very intelligent, he spoke good English, he loved poetry and literature. We were preparing to write the university matriculation exam, but he was not prepared to. His name is Christopher. He wasn't interested. So one day I called and said, we were talking about JAM and our prospect, our dreams of university. He would just be silent, he won't be part of us. So I called him, why? He said, well, his university was not meant for him because no member of his family had ever been to the university. So he wasn't going to go. Think about it. His mother, his father, he didn't have the resources to take him to the university, so why even bother? And he was very serious about it. I said, Christopher, you can't do this. You can be the first person to go to the university in your family. Please go take JAM. He said he didn't have the money. I had to coax him. I gave him part of the money, took him to our pastor, told our pastor what this guy was saying. I said, what nonsense are you saying? You have to go to the university. You are too intelligent not to go. And he added money to it for him to go and pick the form, take passport photograph, and he did and wrote the JAMB. And guess what? We both got admitted the same year into the same university, into the same course. Today, he's a graduate. What happened? There was another story that dislodged the story that he had been growing up with. What was that story? You can be the first person to go to the university in your family. So, stories are very important. It depends on what stories you're telling yourself. Don't use a story to excuse your present unsavory state of life. Instead, create stories that help you mount up. That is the story that helps you. Beware of the story you are telling yourself, because the stories are responsible for your unhappiness. Stories are meant to build, not to tear down. Unless tearing down means destroying negativity. So my friend, watch those stories you are telling yourself from all areas of your life. There are those today who are undergoing all sorts of problems. Premarital relationship, they say my father was like that, my family have been like that. Some people are having stories of divorce, stories of brutality in relationship. They say it runs in our family. There are those who have a story of they can't stay in the husband's house. They keep moving because their mothers were like that, their aunts and people that they respected in their family were like that. It is a jinx in the family. There is no jinx that you're not giving power to. If you remove the power from the jinx, it will fade into nothing. It will be a distant echo that is too weak to attract your attention. Stories are powerful. Watch the story you are telling yourself. Some tell stories, are living with stories of premature ejaculation. They can't keep steady in affairs, and so that ruins their relationships. It's a story. Every malaise, every negativity in your life, every suffering you are going through is powered by a story. Find out the story. Well, again, you don't have to label yourself and start looking for the story like I was doing in America, trying to get to the roots of all my challenges and engrams. You don't have to do that. All you need to do is to make a decision today, this moment, to overcome those things. Your body has a way of generating the right emotions, and the right emotions have a way of locating what it has to combat. That is how it is. You have a very sophisticated machine in your human system, and you as soul, you are very resourceful. There is nothing you lay your attention on that you cannot handle, because when you as soul focus your attention on something negative, that thing dies with time. But as mind, at the level of the mind, analytically, focus your attention on something negative, that thing, my friend, at the level of mind, that is not the analytical mind now, but the level of the subconscious mind, that thing will just expand. It's like giving it steroid. So be careful what you focus on, because when the subconscious mind focuses on a story, it is seeing it as part of it. That is the ego. Now, when the ego focuses on a story, it is focusing on it on the basis of it is me. All right, because the ego is a sum total of all your past stories. That is what they call personality. Every single story in your past brought together to form it. Right? So if you try to kill a story, the ego will fight you, because you are trying to amputate the ego. It's like somebody trying to cut off your finger. That's what it is. Because if you take one story away, you are amputating and disempowering the ego. The ego will fight you. But I am telling you right now that that ego needs to be destroyed and reconstructed. You need ego to live a wholesome life. But it has to be an ego that is not created by false stories. So keep destroying the negative stories around you and you will grow. But I want to let you know one thing, that there is nothing wrong with your mind. There's nothing wrong with your physical body. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with your family, nothing wrong with your friends, nothing wrong with the job you're doing. There's nothing wrong with your friends, your relationship, your fiancé, your husband. What is wrong is the stories that you have around all of them. The stories you have for each and every one of them. Change these stories. You will see them in new lights. That is the reality of our human life. So my friend, what stories will you now create about your life? Think about it and create it. Dream with that story. Sleep with that story. Wake up with that story. Move about with that story. love that story until it becomes integrated into you. In another video, I'm going to talk about the phenomenon of memory, how it helps to foreground our stories, okay, and how we can handle it and create a better life for ourselves. Watch out for that one. And if this video has any impact on you positively, please be kind enough to share it with people, because by sharing it, you are engaging in selfless service in two ways. One, you are helping those who are receiving it to get something to hook on for their growth, a pulley to take them out of the depth of their negativities. And to us, you are helping us get the traction we require to make this channel keep going. We'll be happy to get your assistance. If you have not subscribed to this channel, we'll be glad if you subscribed. If you like this video, please push the like button. We'll be glad. We'd like to be liked. Like Chico of Classic FM will say, we would like to be liked. Yes, we like to be liked. Thank you. God bless you.